you mean to
So
tell me
you're here downtown, right off of Grant Park, and in between these two buildings, which the camera doesn't show well, but I'll zoom in, is the Sears Tower. Now you can see it much better. It's a nice view of the Sears Tower. I never noticed that before, that between these two buildings you get a beautiful view of the Sears Tower, and the Sears Tower gets a beautiful view of right here. So, and right in front of me is Grant Park, and I'm in Central Station on Roosevelt in basically Michigan. This is Roosevelt in Indiana, and it's, you know, beautiful. And then they have lots of Diddy bikes right here in the park. And then they have these statues, which I'll do around, and let's zoom in. But, you know, like Michael Nedved said, one thing that destroys the park is bums. So these are all statues of people, supposedly. So, but anyways, is he was protesting on his radio show because in the Seattle parks there were all these people and living in the park, and it was ruining the recreational purposes of the park, because the kids wanted to go and families wanted to go, and they didn't want to go to the park to be depressed because they see a homeless person. They wanted to go to get uplifted. And his wife is a therapist. She's a psychologist. And he was talking about how it's depressing going to the park and you see these people that are downtrodden, and you're going to the park to relieve stress, to exercise, to get a walk, to be with the family, to go picnic, to do other events. And you don't want to be there feeling horrible that your life is good and their life is miserable. So, but I'm talking about them. But here's a lovely day for a Guinness, and you got the bird with the Guinness on top of it, and a couple birds flying over with a couple Guinnesses on top of their beak as well. But you come to the park, and this is Grant Park. It's kind of like Central Park. It's right across. This is the west side of the street, and this is South Michigan Avenue. You don't get this on North Michigan Avenue. This is exclusive South Michigan Avenue. You get Grant Park right here, and then if you go further up, and this is on South Michigan, you get Millennial Park, and you also get Maggie Daley Park, and then you also have the Art Institute and that, and that's all on the south side of Wacker Drive. And this is South Michigan Avenue. Now, where north and south start is at a different point, but before that bridge on that crosses over from one side of Michigan Avenue to the other side over the river, so it goes and crosses over, and the first street it hits is Wacker Drive. That bridge didn't exist. They were separate. There was no crossover between, and so this was considered South Michigan, south of Wacker, south of the Chicago River, south of Wacker Drive. So this was all considered South Michigan Avenue. Now the addresses, you go further down, start to turn North Michigan, but it wasn't considered, it was all considered south. So you have this beautiful park across from the Hilton Hotel and the Blackstone Hotel, and so the Congress Hotel. So it makes this area unique from the Mag Mile. The Mag Mile is heavily retail and restaurants and everything else. This is recreational. I should have turned there in the loop here, but this area here is hotels and recreation, not a lot of restaurants. And so South and North Michigan Avenue work very well together. You don't get a lot of businesses up here, and so on. So you have educational institutions like Roosevelt University, and you don't get that on North Michigan Avenue. So you have educational institutions that are on South Michigan. You have the park, you have the waterfront, and they do on North. Truly, if you go further on North Michigan Avenue, yeah, they have Lakeshore Drive and that. And then they have at the point of basically, you would say the end of Michigan Avenue, and it turns into Inner Lakeshore Drive, is Oak Street Beach. So they have the beach up there. They don't have a beach anywhere here, but they do have access to the water down ladders, and there are lifeguards up here, but no beach. But people lay out on the concrete. So they could make it a rubber mesh. Truly, there is like pools do, and they should think about spraying and coating the pavement like you would coat outside of a pool, where it's non-slip and all that, and plus they can make it softer, like they do running tracks, truly like a running track. And so people can lay out here, not on hard rock, but on a little bit of a soft cushion. And so that, you know, that tire rubber, that rubber they spray over and create a track, they can do that over the concrete. It won't come off. And if they coat it right, it won't break up in the winter or anything. And it'll make walking like walking on a running track. It has a little bit of a cushion to it. And it would make this area much more recreational. And then people can lay out there with like inflatable beds. But now these are, instead of towels, you have like an inflatable little thing you put down on the ground, and then you lay on top of this little inflatable bed. So instead of putting your towel, how about a little blow-up bed, and you sit on top of the little blow-up bed, or lay on top of the little blow-up bed. You know, those little blow-up things that you float on the water on? You can use them to lay right down on top of the surface, so you're not laying on cement. So it's nice and soft, and then you put your towel over it, and now you're laying out, catching some sun by the water. So little tricks, and then people would use this more recreational for sunbathing and that. And you can use it in the parks as well. You can use it in the parks as well. Instead of laying on the grass, throwing your, blanket over and sitting on the grass, and put that down. And it doesn't have to be thick. You can make these things for parks, and then you just blow them up really quick, and you lay it down. And then even if the ground is wet, you're not wet. You put that down, and then you put your little blanket on top of that. And now you have a nice little soft area to sit on and picnic on and watch movie in the park. And so it makes it much more recreational. And so you're not worried because you're covering the grass anyways, and you're sitting on it anyways. So, and it has little grooves in it that can allow airflow in. So you can design it where it's friendly to the grass. But again, here you have Millennium Park. And again, this is the uniqueness of South Michigan Avenue. It is totally different. I'll show you, once we cross over the river, it's a different experience. But isn't that great? That here is uniquely different than there? And they have their own value propositions. So if you live up here, you're living more towards Columbia College and Roosevelt and Robert Morris and DePaul and UIC, the law school, UIC Law, and DePaul's downtown campus and everything. So it's a totally different experience living on this side to living on the other side of Wacker Drive. And so they both have their beautiful value propositions. So this is more residential and everything. You have very little retail in comparison. You have lots of hotels. And then you have some food places. But again, it's mostly hotels, education, and residential. And then mixture in some business. But again, those are smaller aspects. When you go over on the other side of Wacker Drive, you're going to go into lots of business. So, and you're going into lots of restaurants, lots of business, and they do have lots of hotels, but you're moving into, lots and lots of retail, lots of dining, and lots of retail, all kinds of different malls. You don't have any malls up here. There's no malls. You got to go all the way down to by the Michael Reese former property, and there's a little strip mall. But there's no malls, zero, on south of Wacker. Zero, all the way up. There's not a single mall. But you cross over here, and you got numerous malls: 900 Michigan Avenue, Water Tower Place, and I forget the others. Oh yeah, you got Block 37 if you go down the State Street, but that's a shopping area. But anyways, I'm talking off of Michigan Avenue. So they got the bridge closed. So anyways, so this is Wacker, and it curves around and it ends up in the financial district. Yeah, Wacker Drive, if you follow it, you'll end up in the financial district. You'll end up at the Sears Tower. And you have several hotels along Wacker Drive, and then a bunch of commercial buildings as well. Not really residential. You got hotels and commercial buildings, and then you have the 17th Church of Christ here, or Christ and Christ Scientists. But anyways, you have the church right here at the corner. It's great. But I've never seen anyone go in and out. Christian Science Reading Room. Truly. I've seen that there for years, but I've never seen people walking in and out. I'm not saying people don't. I've just never been around when they have. I've never been in. And then you got hidden away McCormick Smith's Steakhouse. So it's a little bit different when you're doing this. And so all these areas, say you're in real estate, you have to know this. And realtors need to take architectural tours. And they have to know the areas and inform their clients what they're getting into. These areas, and why would you want to be over here compared to over here, compared to over there? And what's the different value propositions? So when people get in, they're happy with the unit, they're happy with their amenities, and they brag about you. And like, wow, my realtor really did me a solid. I love this neighborhood. But that's because you know the neighborhood. And you're dealing with your clients, and you understand your clients, and you put them in the best place for themselves. Truly. And do you want to live higher? Do you want to live lower? Truly. And then if you go back, like I showed you at 1515 Prairie, there's townhouses right in front. Do you want a townhouse? There's townhouses. You want a single family? There's actually single family houses on Prairie back that way. Now it's South Michigan, but you have single family houses, and then there's single family houses by the Gold Coast. So you can get single family houses as well. So it depends on what you're looking for. So, but you have to understand the area. And they don't understand the area. It's like riding in one of these people, and like me, used to be able to, I'll tell you, like I'm taking younger people out, I'm in Uber, I can tell you the nightclubs, this is hot, you go over to this place, and this is hot at this time, and this is hot. We used to do the same thing in Vegas, or New York City, or LA, or Tucson. At this time, this place is hot. At this time, this place is hot. And places get fuller and then they get less because the crowd tends to move a little bit through the night. And in Korean, they call it sidecars. So you go to this place and then you go from this place to that place. But these are more people that are into the scene. And so they tend to move around informally, like we used to go to. So you go to Elixir first, and you could go to the drink before Elixir, the drink, then you go to Elixir, and then you would end up at the shelter. And then from the shelter, you would go to an after party, truly an after party. And so you went from the drink to Elixir to the shelter. That's 3 places. And then the 4th place and the stop of the night was an after party. And there might be a couple after parties. So you're in 4 or 5 different locations. And it differed by the night. So that was one area, like on Thursday night, that would be hot. But then on Friday, it would be a different area. Saturday, a different area. So they were the hottest on Thursday night. Those ones that I mentioned per se. With the club crowd. Then there's Medusa's and many others. And Billy Corrigan talks about Medusa. But these places where people went and they moved from these places, there are people that do the same thing with pubs. I was more into the nightclub, but I had friends that had a pub circuit, and they moved from this pub to this pub to that pub. So, again, now we're in the financial district, and you got the Chicago Lyric Opera right here, and it's right on top of all the financial. So you would assume that, people that work in the financial, like Costa, my friend, just as an example, you would assume that he would have went to a Lyric Opera, right? Or up on Michigan Avenue, there is the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. But you would think, but he didn't. But he could have cultured himself. It's nothing, but you're just understanding. It's not like you have to do it repeatedly, but when you're interacting with people, traveling, even in Chicago, experiencing different things, gives you more to talk about, more to be able to relate with a broader segment of people. So if they like to talk about the opera, you can talk about the opera. If they like to talk about the symphony, you can say, truly, I've been to the symphony. And I've seen Yo-Yo Ma. I had season tickets to the Chicago Symphony Orchestra for 1 season. But again, you can say, I've been to the Lyric Opera, Swinging Todd. So I've been to an opera. So these are things that you say, oh, I've been to a wine tasting. I've been to a polo match. I went to a polo match in Tucson. It was a wine tasting, and then after the wine tasting, there was a polo match. And I watched a polo match. It was really cool. Tucson, Arizona has a polo ground, and they play a lot of polo in Tucson. But the general people don't know that. And they have a horse track in Tucson, and they have a greyhound dog track. I've been to the horse track in Tucson. I've been to the greyhound dog track. They don't have a professional baseball team or football team, but unlike Phoenix, they don't have that. In Tucson, you have a racetrack, a horse track, you have polo, you have other things that they don't in Phoenix, Scottsdale area. So when you're doing these things, these areas have unique features. What type of life do you want? And so you're trying to figure out how you're going to match the life with the individual. And we have safety. And so we have Titan security, making sure people have a good time and don't have a bad time. The people are trying to create the bad time, they're supposed to eliminate. So the good times roll, because that's why you got security. So the good times never stop, because security they eliminate the bad people. So it's just one big good time after good time after good time. That's their job. I ran security. The job was to make sure the party never stopped. And if the party stops, then security fails. Security is supposed to make sure this country never stops. That's the point of police and everything, that the party never stops. So you have to understand that. That's their job. If things shut down, then the police fail. But if things keep on rolling, and what do terrorists want to do? Bad people want to do? They want to destroy quality of life. They want to interrupt the quality of life. That's what terrorists do. Domestic or international, within your country or domestic, coming from outside your country are international terrorists. But what do? Like the trolls on the internet, like my friend Raul said. He wanted to kick the hell out of them. Because what do? We're having a good discussion. Everything is going great. And the trolls, they want to break up the good times. And so security is supposed to take out the trolls. Truly. And this is why Iraq and all those places never get anywhere. Because the good times can't roll. Because they don't have the proper security taking out all the terrorists, domestic and international, the trolls, the people that are trying to ruin things, the Satans and the demons, the evil individuals. So the good times can continue to roll. That's the job of security. I ran security, and I made sure the party never stopped. So if I had to be harsher, I was harsher. And if I had to crush them, I would crush them. Truly. Whatever it takes to continue on the good times. Whatever I needed to do to accomplish it. And that's why the numbers under me, wherever I went, were the greatest ever. Ever. Any place I ran. There is no one that ever beat me with generating revenue. Because I understand anything wicked and I crush it. I mean, crush it, destroy it, eliminate it. So the good times continue to roll. So that's what security is about. That's what your president, your governor, your county board, your local mayor and the city council, making sure no one interrupts the good times. And if they are, you take them out. Truly. What did they do in the military? As they're going about their patrols and anyone interrupting, they eliminate them. So they understand that. I got a mission. I need to accomplish it. And anyone that gets in the way, we eliminate. So they're not part of the mission. They're an obstacle to completing the mission. So you eliminate. And you have to be ruthless. Because they're ruthless trying to break up the good times. They want the market to go down. Here's the CMA group. Bin Laden hit the exchanges because he wanted them to collapse. He said it in his manifesto. He wanted the exchanges to collapse. He wanted the bond, the stock, the future, the options, the swap. He wanted all the financial exchanges to collapse. Unlike, I don't know what the blind sheik was doing, making a grand statement but bin Laden's goal was to collapse the global financial system. So he wanted to take out the exchange, and that was in the world trade. They were the biggest in New York at that time. It was concentrated, and they wanted to take it out. But that's why you have online trading. If the building gets hit, everything just goes to online. And that's why now they have, I forget what they call the digital exchange of the New York, the NYSE, and so on. And they just kick on that. All the trading goes digital. So if the building gets closed down with a bomb threat or anything, truly, it doesn't stop the trading. They just go digital. The market goes on. It can't be interrupted. Nothing interrupts the market. So again, it just goes digital. So nothing interrupts the market. The party never stops. So, and anyone trying to interfere, you crush them. I'm not trying to interfere. I'm trying to purify the system and getting rid of the satanic and demons. So, bring heaven to earth. And that's my mission, right? Heaven to earth. Thy will be done on earth as is in heaven. So to do this, I must crush the evil people and eliminate them. I have to break and eliminate them. So there will be none. My goal is upon my death to have eliminated any type of threat. Any type of threat. There might be little here or there, but there'll be no significant groups anymore. They will be gone. They will be put to waste. They will be like nothing. So, again, Operation Clean Sweep. Global. Through the United Nations. Coordination. The United Nations have never done that. The goal to wipe out global terrorism. Operation Clean Sweep. Wiping out global terrorism. So the party continues on. Qatar has airlines. Qatar Airlines. The Arab Emirate has airlines. They were never in this business before. They didn't have the Burj Khalifa and everything else. They weren't in our shoes. Now they're in our shoes. And now they understand, looking at 9/11, that terrorism, well, that's why Saudi Arabia said, and this was before 2016, I think in 15, they said in 5 years, they will wipe out any form of terrorist threat within Saudi Arabia. As many people as they need to put to death, they will put to death. They will eliminate all forms. And what did they do? After they did that, they opened it up to tourism. So, isn't that great? You got the king and government of Saudi Arabia guaranteeing you as a tourism. You won't be kidnapped. You won't be messed with. We eliminated all forms of threats. There's no gangs in Saudi Arabia. They don't have mafia in Saudi Arabia. They have none of that. The only thing they had were terrorists, and as far as I understand, they don't exist anymore. So you can go there, and they did afterwards. Recently, they opened it up. Before, you could never go to Saudi Arabia. But they eliminated all forms of terrorism, and they opened it up. So they didn't say, come to Saudi and there might be some terrorism here. They went on a massive mission to eliminate. And then they said, after they eliminate, come to Saudi Arabia. Come here, have a good time, hang out. Follow our rules. But besides that, you can have a great time. It's a great place. I have friends that went there. My friend worked in the exchanges. He loved it there. It was great. He never had one single problem. He called me from there. He's never had a single freaking problem. Now, you follow the rules. My friend Jimmy was in the desert. He never had a problem either. Now, besides his military duty, we're talking about him being in Saudi Arabia and that. He was up in Saudi Arabia. He never had a problem. So, again, they made sure that no one was going to ruin the party. Like, so anyways. So I'm down here. Here's the Chicago Architecture Center. Now, they should be talking about all kinds of earthquake planning and how the buildings deal with environmental conditions and so on and so forth, right? Smart building structure. How do they now modernize these buildings to deal with any types of environmental issues? And an environmental issue is an earthquake, a volcanic eruption. Some places like the Ring of Fire that we have that goes all the way around and part of California and so on. Truly, they have to say, how is the building designed to handle a volcanic eruption? And you're on the West Coast, you're staying there, you want to know, how's the building designed to handle an earthquake? How's the building designed to handle a volcanic eruption? Those are the two main threats. They don't have tornadoes. They don't have hurricanes. And in the Pacific, it's typhoons. Hurricanes are in the Atlantic. But again, the water's too cold. It goes warm by Hawaii and all that, but it gets too cold. And that deep water, it goes very deep before it gets to California. So the water gets cold. But global warming, then California and the West Coast is going to experience typhoons. Oh yeah, if the oceans heat more, California will have something it never had to deal with. We call them from the Atlantic hurricanes. In the Pacific, they call them typhoons. They're the same thing. But California and Oregon, look up there, Oregon, Washington, the water's really cold. They don't deal with them. But if global warming stays, all that, they're going to have to deal with hurricanes and that. And are they prepared to deal with typhoons, which are hurricanes? So if global warming, all that West Coast real estate, San Diego and all that, they never had to deal with any of those. They get storms and they get droughts and they have forest fires and they have mudslides, which should have been addressed. I've been writing them for decades on how to solve the problem with all that. But again, we get the Indianapolis 500 down here. So here's Navy Pier. So again, taking out, like in California, all those traces, I already showed you. And the car just sped by me, has a chip. You can shut off the car. And you say, well, they'll shield the chip. You can shield the chip. And then it can only work with inside, but that means you can't have remote start, right? Until the device. So you could do that and shield the chip in the car. And then the car can't be hacked into. So there's radio frequency shielding, and then you don't have to worry about that. But if you have remote start, then you have to worry about it. But again, you can do laser or something else. Surely microwave. You don't have to use radio frequency. You can use microwave frequency. You can use laser. You can use light. Yeah, there's visible light, but there's also non-visible light. You can use UV, and you want the UVA or UVB. I forget which is the least harmful, but you want the longest band of UV, and it will pass through structures, and you can remote start your car with UV energy. So you don't have to use radio frequency. So you can use different forms to initiate. So again, it brings more security, right? So I'm down here by the pier, Navy Pier. But like those cars speeding through, they can just shut them down. And they can set it up with the police only have the secure access, and they can work with the red light cameras, and they kill the engine. Truly, the speed cameras can kill the engine. And so the engine slowly just governs down. And so they can work with the chip makers that will allow the car to start stalling. And people know, the automakers say that, that if you do speeding in that, then the car will automatically go into a governor and it will slow you down. So it doesn't have to stall the car, but if you're going too fast, it just slows the car down. So it doesn't allow you to speed. And we can get into a system that, through the camera system and that working with the auto manufacturers, installs it, and it automatically slows the car down. So you're speeding and it just slows it down and you can't speed anymore. Truly. So you might be able to speed for a short stretch, and then you hit the camera system and it recognizes, the radar recognizes, and then it just sends out the signal and brings you down to 35 miles an hour or 25 miles an hour. And you can shove the pedal to the floor, the car won't go any faster. And then once you're out of that zone, it allows you to go up to 30, 35, 40, 45 as the speed limits change. So again, you can set up controlled systems and you can make things very safe. And so the city can be safe. Like if a car goes on the sidewalk, the camera system would recognize it. Like there's one right under the bridge right here. Well, you can't see it, kind of. But it would recognize it, and it would automatically cut the engine. Truly, cut the engine, lock the doors, and roll up the windows, and the police will be on their way. Police are automatically notified, car is stalled, everything is locked. They have to kick out the windows or whatever to get out. It gives police time to get to the scene. So in London and all that, they would want it, in Germany and France. So Mercedes, BMW, and everybody would be on board. Volkswagen, they'd be all for that. Their people walk down the street. Truly. Ask how many people at Mercedes, Volkswagen, or BMW were in the Christmas market in Germany when the truck went through. Ask them. I guarantee you they had employees in that market. And they might have had employees that died in that market. But ask Fiat or other car makers that are in France that they had that. And thank God it's never hit Italy yet. But they have to make sure that it doesn't happen. So you have to put in the systems in place to control these individuals from being able to use things like it. Like we had the guy driving the car into Times Square. So, and then the one guy went on to the National Guard base. I think it was National Guard, because the tank he took, thank God, was the National Guard has older model tanks. And that wasn't the M1 Bradley. That thing goes at 60 miles an hour. The one he was driving doesn't go that fast. But if he had a modern Bradley, even back then, those tanks, I know for a fact, went about 60, something like that, 50 something, and he would have been flying through things. It would have been a nightmare. But they don't have those advanced tanks for the National Guard. They have the later models. Yes, they go from the U.S. military, and then they go down into the National Guard. And then from the National Guard, we sold a lot of tanks to, those tanks. We had a lot of tanks we sold to Iraq. So after the National Guard was done with them, then we sold them to countries like Iraq. So those tanks were 2 to 3 generations old. I think 3 generations. And they bought some Russian tanks as well, old Russian tanks. They had a lot of tanks. Truly. Saddam had a lot of tanks. But the tanks were outdated. And wasn't that a benefit to us? That all those tanks weren't modern tanks. But he had one of the biggest tank armies in the world. truly, he acquired incredible amounts of heavy armor. But since they were outdated, the Apaches and the Bradleys and all that could take them out fairly easily. They couldn't hurt ours, but we could destroy theirs. So it does matter what generation of technology you give these countries. So I'm going to end this video.